Hi, welcome to Tales of Dread. I'm 24 and live in the middle of nowhere. I will be brief and basic about my meeting. After dropping off my sister in Lamar, Colorado, I got home late. I reside around 250 acres north of the Oklahoma border. My property has coyote traps. I continued south after finding 2 empty traps. That's when I noticed this creature. Now at first I thought it was a coyote, just a very large coyote. It was about 5 feet tall, on all fours, and trapped in my trap. It ran around producing a dust cloud, then stopped and stared at me. Now I use a Duke No. 3 leg hold track to capture different animals. Anyway, I slammed on the brakes and my vehicle stuck. Since it's a manual, I was fumbling for the keys to start it. Old farm vehicle with carburetor had a lot of afterfire. Then it charged me and roared. I observed that it had its hand, not paw, but a genuine hand hooked in my trap. It was probably looking for the dead rabbit I had in the bait hole next to the trap. It then rose up and ripped the 2 earth anchors. I dug out 24 inches. I placed them in with a 10-pound hammer, but it yanked them out in 15 seconds like nothing. Then it simply stood there gazing at me. It seemed endless. And I knew my .357 Magnum would do little to stop this beast if it came at me. I begged to God Almighty that it wouldn't come for me in my vehicle. I was looking at it in shock and awe and noticed that it had orange amber eyes. They weren't shining. They had a dark, cat-eye tinge. They may have been reflecting my headlights. It walked towards me, curled its lip, and showed me its teeth. The longest was 4 to 5 inches long. It hissed at me, then disappeared. Then I slammed the vehicle into drive and spun the tires to escape. My Indian friend and I later returned. I trusted him since childhood. He told me tales of a loup-garou, or the French werewolf, from his grandparents' tribe. My 10-year-old grandson was waiting for his paternal grandmother in a restaurant parking lot on August 27, 2016. The creature was 7 to 8 feet tall, based on his description. It walked on 2 legs into a wooded area at the end of a sidewalk. The monster wasn't worried about my grandson since it was slow. He described a dog guy with crimson eyes when I questioned him about it. The thing was 30 feet away. Semi-rural city with trees and forests. His sighting spotted paved roads and walkways, surrounded by trees. The 3rd of March 1953. The event I'd like to relate is not mine, but my mother's. She used to tell me tales when I was little about unusual things she'd encountered. The sighting happened in Sacramento, California, approximately 1953, not far from our state's capital. Google Maps to estimate location and terrain. The sighting spot was around 1,000 feet west of the American River. East Bank Riverside. So this happened quite near to a major inhabited region. My mother says she was 12 and watching TV on the sofa. She saw a terrifying dog face in a low window. The window was either on or by the door. I'm confused. The head was 2 to 2.5 feet above the ground, she claimed. She hid her face with her pillow. She peeked after a minute, thinking she was imagining things. She felt better seeing it gone. Then she realized it was now staring through another higher window. Its head was 4.5 feet above the ground. According to her memory, there was no dog bed outside the window. She fled in fear. She describes dark, gray animals with red eyes panting or baring their teeth. She didn't see the body, but it seemed slender. My parents say there are possibly American Indian burial places in the region since arrowheads and other artifacts have been found along the river. I questioned my mom about nearby cornfields. My grandparents' neighborhood wasn't wooded. Large pastures with horses and livestock dominated the area. The river is presently forested, although it was more so in 1953. Another spooky claim about this region is that in a Monster Quest episode about the Mothman, someone was taking a dusk or night photo of the Tower Bridge in 2009 and saw a flying humanoid figure or something off of the bridge. I was going to turn left, but two young men walked off trail to a tree. 50 feet down the path, I heard a huge roar combined with two screams, then nothing. I believed it was the two missing men, but there was no laughing. My arms rose up in surprise. I left because it was 8:40, and the sun was setting. A black figure stood about 120 feet from where the two young men were earlier. At first I thought it was a bear standing up because it was roughly about 7 foot tall and backlit by the sun. A branch hid the face, and it was too far away to smell. I snapped 2 photos and departed. In October 1972, my husband, our 2 babies, my brother, and I left Leavenworth, Kansas. In our 1968 Volkswagen van to Beaver Lake, Arkansas. We discovered an isolated campground towards the park's end. We desired privacy since the infants woke up regularly to eat. No one wanted to be disturbed. My brother put his tent next to the vehicle once we arrived. We slept in the vehicle. The campground featured a horseshoe-shaped rocky terraced ledge that ascended from 50 to 100 feet behind the 4 tents. Due to old trees and heavy vegetation, sunlight had problems reaching our place. 3:30 a.m. I heard coyotes on the ridge. The infants were sleeping and everything was peaceful, but I could hear unusual yips and noises outside. I sat in the back seat. The vehicle wall crashed near to my head. My husband awoke suddenly. My brother leapt from his tent and entered the vehicle. We were all in panic to say the least, looking in every direction, trying to see what it had hit the van like that. My brother eventually exclaimed that he spotted something moving behind the vehicle. We turned to see a 20-foot-long shadow moving from left to right behind the van. We hadn't seen any activity for 20 minutes. My husband and brother went out to examine the vehicle for damage but found none. 50 feet behind us, we heard hammering steps. My husband put on the headlights and braked for the rear light as the men got back into the van. In the headlights' glare, we saw a hairy creature 10 feet distant approaching the vehicle. As it got closer, its silver-tipped hairs glistened in the light. From its shoulders to its buttocks, it was gray. The 7 to 8 foot tall, barrel-chested monster walked on 2 legs. It never offered us a decent glimpse of its eyes, so I can't tell you what they look like. It was very dog-like. Its ears had fur tufts and its movements and body structure were human-like. It moved smoothly and quickly around the van and followed the ridge away from us before leaving. A menacing huff and a dog-like growl. My husband and brother jumped out of the van to look. That's when a rain of gravel flew at us. My husband and brother sped out of there in the van. We continued checking in the back window and rearview mirrors, but we never saw anything again. It appeared to dog-like in its face and was too skinny in its body. August, then 17, still has day-like sensations after the experience. My dad and mom had brought my small brother and sister to Tucson to do something for the day. Outside Sierra Vista, we lived in a trailer. As the eldest son, it was my obligation to feed and care for our horses, dogs, cow, and chickens that night. My 2 dogs began barking and wouldn't stop when I ordered them to quiet down. In the week prior, they'd been acting up and barked a lot at night. I blamed 2 howling coyotes. So I grabbed my dad's rifle and 1 bullet in case I needed to scare off or kill the coyote. I set the loaded gun on the wall at the rear entrance and switched on the floodlights outside the trailer, the rain having just ceased. I looked out the front door window to see our horses and cows staring at the back door of the trailer where the dogs were barking. As I approached the rear door with the rifle, I heard my dog moaning and wailing. I thought it may be coyotes. So I placed a few rounds in my pocket, assuming I could load them if I didn't like what I saw. My 2 dogs ran through me to the middle of the trailer and crouched down in the kitchen, leaving mud everywhere. Now I had to clean it up, so I locked the door and attempted to get my dogs out, but they wouldn't budge and wriggle out of my arms. They panicked. Now angry at the coyotes, I grabbed a rifle to kill them. The trailer rests on blocks and has steps leading to the front and rear doorways. I'm 56 by the way. I opened the back door and was looking out the darkness when I saw eyes looking back at me out of the darkness. From the top of my head in the trailer to the ground is 7 feet or so, and here are eyes looking at me level and square on. I imagined Don Coyote on the gravel slope. We used to pave the road, else it's a mesquite bush. Moonshine was nasty and poured hard, I thought. Why would a mesquite bird burrow down and a coyote be out in the rain? So I'm lifting my rifle and pulling a bead on the eyes when lightning lights up the night, the sun, the tiny gravel hill and the surrounding mesquite plants, and the light winks away as soon as it emerged from the lightning. The gravel slope and shrubs had no birds. Then it dawned on me. Whatever it was incredibly tall and was still looking at me. The rifle only had 1 measly bullet, and if I missed, I couldn't reload before it was on me. I aimed the revolver at it while I hurriedly closed and secured the door, knowing this trailer wouldn't resist an onslaught. I locked the door and turned on the lights. I took all the ammunition, the 30-06 and the 22 rifle, and then went in the kitchen with the dogs and I loaded each weapon completely on. I held my dogs and hoped it wouldn't attack. I stayed awake that whole night until my parents got back. My dad was unhappy because all the lights were on. My dad checked outside for coyotes, but whatever it was gone, and I could only hope it was gone for good. I saw 2 loping individuals a mile from home. Initially I thought the figures were coyotes or maybe stray dogs, but as the 2 figures near an old sunken vehicle, I realized that the things were about the size of the vehicle, nearly 8 foot in length. Now no animal could be that big on the reservation. I observed 2 individuals vanish into the valley's forests. I walked without a light since the moon was brilliant. As I went down the mountain, I heard somebody shouting. A howl or yell. I rushed. Then I shut my door and spent the night listening to odd noises. Probably a skinwalker or werewolf. Story 8. In the 1980s, 4 of us visited the Snake River, which was 5 miles from our town. Eastern Oregon has sagebrush and hills. It was at the beginning of winter, so there was just a tiny quantity of snow on the ground. We thought the full moon would make the river look amazing. My husband, sister, and her boyfriend were in a '68 Mustang and we were so cool. We had some beer and cannabis and were ready to enjoy the night. We left at 11 o'clock for a recreational area where people could camp and launch boats. To reach there, you must exit the main road and follow the dirt and gravel toward the boat docks and parking area. The moonlight made shapes around you visible. Just parked, we're conversing. My spouse handed me a cigarette. As I was about to take a hit, I saw something move 20 yards in front of the car. My initial idea was that maybe it was a deer. As I turned to pass the joint, I observed it move to the right. My sister felt something was awry straight immediately. She was going to inquire what was wrong when she observed this object creeping toward the rear of the automobile. Note that I had scarcely taken a hit. My sister didn't smoke or drink, and no one else had time, so we were all sober. The guys asked what and we said something is out there. They just started to laugh, but then they saw it moving around the left of the car. At that time I felt the goosebumps all over my body and I had a really awful feeling about the entire scenario. This object went around to the front of the vehicle again, but I realized it was closer than before. I wanted to leave quickly because I was scared, and the guys wanted to know what it was. When it circled the vehicle again, my husband hit the headlights, but nothing happened. When he struck the headlight, it was on the right side of the automobile, closer than previously. We were clueless. By this time my sister, who was just 13, was freaking out and so was I. We yelled at my husband to get us out. He must have been creeped out too because he started the car, slammed into reverse and spun out there backwards, heading for the loop so we can get back to the main road. We skidded around the loop, dropped down toward the boat docks and began a slight climb up to the main road. We believed we were safe, but as we climbed out of the headlights, the worst thing I'd ever seen occurred. A thing emerged, however. It stood like a human but was slender and covered with silvery brown hair. It spun as the headlights touched it and we were so near we could see some fairly excellent detail. I believe this monster looked me over as if to memorize my face. Its eyes had black pupils and the sight of them was like staring at a maniac. Pure evil and insanity appeared to be the only thing in them as soon as this occurred, which couldn't have been more than just a few seconds. Later, he said my husband hit the gas as he approached. He hit it. It moved so fast it blurred and disappeared. Why? Even the headlights caught it. Unsure? We ran as quickly as we could. In the midst of nothing, there were no houses, businesses, or anything. We couldn't figure out what we saw. Werewolf sprang to mind.